Welcome back to another episode of Success by the Book, where we apply timeless truths and principles to life and business in 30 minutes or less. I am joined, as I always am, by three of the greatest men you're going to meet in this industry, starting with Dale Verlaine, who's the founder and CEO of Mortgage Champions. Dad, good to see you.
Great to be here, Jake. Thank you.
We, of course, have the national leadership coach over at Movement Mortgage. That's Coach Bill Hart. Coach, good to see you.
Good to see you, Jake. Thanks.
And you just celebrated another anniversary. I mean, you got a couple decades at this point into this marriage. Did you guys have a good time?
34 years, and we're enormously grateful. We thank God every single day for what we have. Yeah, amazing. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. It's a fun anniversary.
For sure. And of course, we have Coach Kyle Draper, who's the creator and author of Rethink Everything. Kyle, you were live this morning reading from your very book.
I was, yeah, man. We're gonna get that Audible version out.
Love that.
So,
I've been trying to get my dad to do a self-read audio version of his book for some time now. So we'll make it happen someday, I promise.
I'm not shocked that Dale is being stubborn. So that doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, the guy's just so busy,
I will encourage you, Dale, and tell you that my publisher told me I had to. Okay. And then they sent me a kit that I set up in my master bedroom in Labor Day weekend. I just read through it, man, and it has paid dividends far beyond the time invested. So if I can encourage you, there's a lot more people that will consume your content if it's available on audio. So let this be your encouragement today. The vision, see what I'm doing here? The vision of the Audible version of the book.
Got it.
I just made a note because I've got the print version of your book, Coach, that I've been reading, which has been fantastic. But I will get through it so much quicker if I can listen on my way to and from work. So
it's right there, buddy.
Making a note right now. That's my next Audible credit. So
you bet. Well, it's in Mandarin, just so you know. But I hope you enjoy it. What?
I guess maybe my daughter will be able to study it.
There you go.
That's right. Well, today we are talking about vision, how to never overlook an opportunity. There's so much that we can talk about in terms of vision, but I think the sad reality is a lot of people simply don't have it, right? Whether at an individual level or at the team or company level, there's just no real clear picture. And clarity is really important there, right? Like there might be some sort of jargon on a piece of paper somewhere, some sort of extended manifesto. There might even be values that are slapped on a wall somewhere, but there's no clear vision of where are we going. So before we dive into how do you set a vision, how do you execute on that vision, who do you involve in the vision making process, let's first paint the picture of what it looks like and what the costs are of not having a vision. So Dad, I know you see this all the time. Coach, I'm sure you see it as well. Let's start with you two guys. What are the dangers of not having a vision, both as an individual and as a company?
Great, Coach.
Well, I mean, the dangers of not having a vision, I feel like is, it reminds me of the days when I was learning to fly. If you hop into a small plane, if anybody's ever had this experience, and you don't have any sense of where you're going, I mean, it could just be a fun day of kind of out here where I live in Southern California. It's like we'll buzz around Malibu and look for some whales or whatever. Like that's a fun day. But if you're going on a trip, if you're going on a journey, you've got to plot that out on a chart. You got to let people know, file a flight plan. And it creates a much more cohesive journey. So I feel like in the mortgage industry in particular, and at the time that we're recording this, people may be watching and listening at different times throughout the year. But, it's the end of the year. And Dale, you and I are very focused on business planning right now. It may have been for a long time. But it's the idea of, I guess, the difference between reactivity, where every day is just kind of reacting to what's happening out there, and proactivity. If I was going to oversimplify it, that's what I would say is the major benefit of a vision, whether it's for your relationship. I just celebrated 34 years, of marriage, or if it's about your diet or fitness or your business or, quite honestly, your eternity. It's the difference between just reacting to things that happen and having a vision laid out in front of you that makes you a bit more proactive.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I was thinking about back when I was 16 years old and I was training to get my driver's license. And I remember the instructor saying, now here's the deal. Do not look at the hood of the car. Look way out into the area ahead of you or you're going to crash. It's going to happen. And that's exactly what vision is. I see too many people looking down at their hood instead of looking out and saying, where am I going? If you don't know where you're going, if you don't have vision to see where you're going, then how do you know that you've achieved anything? How do you have a foundation of what success even looks like? It all comes back to what you're looking at, looking for, and looking to. Those are the things that establish whether or not you've established your goals.
Great visual. Love that. I've never looked at the hood, I don't think. Oh my goodness, that sounds frightening.
Kyle,
That's
as
why you're still
Christians-
with us, Bill.
That's right. Yeah. Kyle, as Christians, I'm sure when we think about the cost of not setting a vision, we probably think of Proverbs 29:18. It reads, where there is no vision, the people perish, but blessed is the one who heeds wisdom's instruction. Obviously, as a former pastor, I'm sure you probably laid down that very verse for people, whether in your own church or for those who are congregating underneath you. Give us a little bit of a Christian perspective on how Scripture points us to the value of vision, and maybe some of the ways that you've learned that we can cast vision that's inclusive rather than sort of domineering, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think Dale and Coach Bill already did such a great job of showcasing us what this is. I think the biggest struggle we have now is most people just wake up and fly by the seat of their pants. And if I'm being honest, I think I fly by the seat of my pants more often than I wish I did. And so that's always a struggle because I'm not naturally organized. I just kind of, I feel like one of my superpowers is winging it, as weird as that sounds. And, I think the biggest fear today is, the individual loan officer that listens to this obviously needs to cast vision for their family, for their business. But I think what I see as a failure across our industry, more so than that, is what Proverbs 29:18 says. I don't think leadership typically casts vision. They just tell people what to do.
Yeah.
And I remember years ago, Stephen Furtick is one of my favorite pastors, pastor of Elevation Church. And he was talking about, and of course, this resonated with me as a youth pastor. And so, Dell, I know this will resonate with you. Like when you teach young people why they shouldn't have sex before marriage, we just say, don't do it. It's bad. And Stephen Furtick broke it all down about how, we just tell people that instead of casting vision for what their life could look like, should you choose to take part, and what could it look like should you choose to not. And the reason most people don't do it that way is because it's messy. It's frustrating when we do cast vision to people and they still choose to go, I'm going to go do my own thing anyway. And so I think we've just created this industry full of a bunch of managers that by pay are calling themselves leaders. And we're choosing to forego the vision cast. And it is so dangerous to what we do. My wife and I celebrate our anniversary in about 10 days. And we'll be in Mexico. And we'll spend a little bit of time while we're on the beach in Mexico forecasting what do we want this next season of life to look like. And it's so simple, yet it's so powerful to come back to the States on the same page. Yet it's so easy to miss and go, dang, I think we just kind of winged that whole year. And so I think that's the danger. Isn't that necessarily bad will happen, but that we just won't do as much good as we're capable of because we'll end up, jacking around and end up with a bunch of average.
That's so good, brother. I love that you're getting away for a trip, for an anniversary trip that will include planning. That's spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
And presumably margaritas. I'm just guessing.
Well, 100%.
Well,
yeah. No, don't vision cast sober. Like, why would we do that?
You'll dream small. You got to dream big, baby. Come on. Oh my goodness. I tell you what that reminds me of is, in Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about begin with the end in mind. And the thing I try and always help clients to see is, if you're going to bake a cake, like I'm going to tell you guys, one of the things my wife Tony and I discovered for a decompression show during COVID, when the world was insane, was the Great British Baking Show. I don't know if you guys have
Oh,
ever
that's
watched
good.
it. I never thought I would see it. Never thought I would watch it or have any interest. But it's one of those things that I just feel my heart rate lowering when I'm watching it, right? And it's like if I go into the kitchen, I have to have a recipe. I want to see, what does that cake look like? How many eggs do I need? How much flour? How much time? I like, to your point, Kyle, I'm a wing it guy too. But if I wing it with a cake,
Yeah.
it's not going to be good, right? So when Covey told us to begin with the end in mind, the thing that I was always trained on at Building Champions with Daniel Harkavy was life planning. We always started every client at some point with a life plan, and since then I've gotten certified with Michael Hyatt's life focus plan. It's called Life Focus, and it's just a fantastic packaged way. If anybody's watching this, feel free to hit me up. I can walk you through it. But it's such a wonderful process to say, what do I want my life to look like? Dale, you and I have been married almost the same amount of time. I was thinking yesterday how many times I see on social media, I'll bet everybody can relate to this. It's either a picture or a video or a drawing of an old couple kissing, holding hands, and it says something like life goals. And there's enough of that out there on social media that people actually aspire to that.
Yeah.
I want to grow old with my spouse. And I believe that starts with a vision. I know that was true in our marriage. It started with a vision. I'm not saying it was always perfect, but at some point we were like, that's the couple we want to be. And so whether it's your business, your life, your marriage, it's got to begin with a vision. And I think that whole idea of begin with the end in mind is a good one.
Good.
Love that. So, there are plenty of leadership quotes when it comes to vision, right? One of my favorites that I think transitions us nicely here is from Warren Bennis. He says, leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. Now, that, of course, gets back to Cal's point, which is that we've got a lot of people in this industry who, maybe through no fault of their own, they just haven't been properly equipped or prepared, are acting as managers and not as leaders, right? It's a leader who's going to step up and translate vision after you've cast it into something that's actually going to become reality. So knowing that you guys have made what I think is a compelling case for, we need to have a vision for our personal life, for our professional life. We can even have things like a vision for our relationships. You guys are talking about having a vision within your marriage, for example, but that could even be, someone in the industry that you want to get to know better, or a colleague or superior that you want to get closer to. How does someone actually begin to take steps towards turning that vision into reality? Coach, you say this all the time, dream big. If those goals are intentionally far off because you're dreaming big, what are the first things that you do to take steps, and how do you maybe even measure your progress to know that you're tracking in the right direction? We can start with you, Coach.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, for me, I always take it to, so what does that mean to you? One of the jokes right now, I think with most coaches is when you ask somebody, we're in a crazy season right now, so it may not be the exact same answer, but for years it was, what are your goals? What do you want to do next year? And everybody would say 100 million, because magically, this, Dale, that was just sort of like the goal that should be out there. I mean, honestly, this year, 2024, 50 million was probably a good goal for most people. But, that's just, it's a number. It doesn't mean anything. And so what I would always lean in on as a coach is, what does that mean to you? What does that make possible? Like if you did 100 million, if you did 75, whatever that number is, which I think is the exact opposite way to do it, like, what does that mean to you? Well, I'm paying off debt. I'm investing in real estate. I've got some passive income. I'm going to take my family to Italy for 3 weeks. All of that, Dale, you know this because you coach people every day. It opens up the dialogue. Well, if we're going to get you there, then this is the volume. These are the team members you need. These are the systems that need to be tightened up. These are the disciplines you have to commit to, right? So it's sort of, I hope that's answering the question, Jake, but I think for us, here's the best way I've ever heard it. Many of you know Josh Metal in Salt Lake City, Utah. I remember him 10 years ago saying to me when he had completed his life plan, which included his business plan. He said, for me, it was like taking an anchor on a rope over my head and throwing it out into the future, and it's stuck there. And every day now, my job is to pull closer to that vision. So every activity was connected to the vision instead of just, like we were saying, Dale, just kind of reacting to your day.
100%. Yeah, I think it backs into the question, right? Because I think you're actually taking a step back, which is a good idea, to differentiate what's the difference between goals and vision, right? a vision is something you have to be able to picture. You can't picture yourself as a $100 million producer, but you can picture yourself as living in a new house, driving a new car, you know what I mean? Taking more vacation
For
time,
sure.
whatever it, like those are the things you can actually envision, which is what makes it a vision. Then you have to set goals that are going to get you to achieving that vision, right?
You bet.
Dad, you obviously are coaching people to do this every day. There's probably no one better in the industry to talk to about what steps you take. What's the bridge that you build
Yeah.
between today's activities and achieving that ultimate vision?
Well, first and foremost, your vision has to create a belief system in you. That's number one. When I train leaders, one of the things that I say all the time is, the most common question I get from the leaders I train is, all right, all the years you led sales and operations and big teams, and then all the leaders you've trained, the thousands all over the country, what is the number one bit of advice you give them? I go, that's real simple. You need to see in people what they don't see in themselves. You need to have the vision for them that they don't have for themselves. You've got to look at your 3 loan a month producer and say, no, you're a 15 loan a month producer. You may not know it yet, but I know it because I see it. And what that vision does is it starts to cast a belief system in the other person. Now, the key to that is you got to be sold out when you say it. You can't say it and then alter it later. You've got to believe it. And there's no reason why you shouldn't. As I've said a million times, if I've got a sales team of 20 loan officers and one of them's doing 15, then all of them can do 15. If one of them's doing 30, then all of them can do 30 because everybody gets their pants on one leg at a time. But to the point that Bill made, which was so good, I had a good friend, I've quoted him many times, dear friend of mine back, you remember Dan Anderson from back in when we lived in Grays Lake, Gurnee.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine. He had this great quote he used to say. He says, if you're going to pray for rain, have a hoe in your hand. I used to love that quote. Okay. And the same thing holds true for vision. If you're going to cast a vision of where you want to go, then you got to be willing to do the work, to Bill's point, to get there. So now what you have to do is break it down and say, okay, here's my vision. I believe I can do this. You've got to get that belief system right. But once you set that belief system in place, now you got to articulate what are the actions and activities that I need to do every day. Our whole lives, when it comes to our professional and personal success, are built on only 2 principles: belief and behavior. That's it. It's how you believe and it's how you behave that dictates your life. So if you get a vision of what you want to be, you can buy into that vision. And sometimes that takes a great leader constantly reminding you, or a colleague reminding you. This is why accountability, we talked about a couple of episodes ago, is so important, to have somebody hold you accountable to that. If you can get that belief system in place, now it's just defining the actions that will get you there. And there's always actions that will get you there. Nobody became a top producer without doing things to get them to top production.
Yeah, that's so good.
So good.
Kyle, I've got a question for you, but I know you're taking notes. So if there's something else you want to add to this conversation.
On my baseball.
Oh, nice,
Belief and
buddy.
behavior.
Nice.
Love
Of
that.
all the things you could have done in that moment, that was at the bottom of my list of possibilities, that you're going to hold up a baseball that you were making notes on. Oh my
Well,
goodness.
I hold this when I'm to keep me from distraction,
I love that.
and I've turned it into my like notes. So I like write little notes on here that people
So
say.
cool, buddy. I love everything about you.
Dad can sign that for you, but it's $69.99 plus shipping. So
Okay, got it. Send me a Venmo.
let me ask you this. So Kyle, you've shared a lot of stories on the show already, which has been so fun to sort of learn about you, along with the audience. But one of the things that you've shared is, you originally as a young man envisioned yourself as a pastor, and you came to the conclusion that ultimately that vision really was to serve people. When you launched Rethink Everything, you envisioned one book. It's now become a series of books. So vision can morph to the better over time. Can you just walk us through like what that's looked like in your life and how you would maybe counsel someone who's feeling like maybe they've had a vision for a while, but it's at that point where it's starting to shift and it makes them a little nervous, like how they can navigate that process?
Yeah, I think what a great question, Jake. I think it ultimately comes down to, do you have a vision for your life? Right? Because I think there's plenty of books about, getting a vision for your business, getting a vision for your marriage, right? Becoming a better leader. But I don't know that most people could sum their life's purpose up into one sentence. And so for me, I thought back in my 20s, I thought that vision was being a pastor. And then when God ripped that part of the vision away, and said, hey, bro, you're going to go over here and be a pastor in heart, but a businessman by trade, I, for a little while, gosh, for almost a year, I felt so lost because I had tied up all of my vision and who I was into being a pastor, right? Like that was the favorite thing about myself. And so God takes it away and I'm like, well, shoot, what's left? And after about a year of just praying through it, and this doesn't sound like great advice, but all I know to do when I'm stuck is pray. It's all I know to do.
Amen.
It's
Right?
fantastic advice.
To us, that makes sense. But like to the person that may not even believe like we believe, that's listening to this podcast, like you may not even know what that looks like. All I'm saying is just start an internal dialogue in your head with somebody you may not be able to picture yet. We're going to call it God. You call it whatever you want. He's still going to hear you, whether you know he's there or not. And I just had to start going, God, what are you doing? And what he finally gave me, which now is just my life's mission, is, Kyle, all I want you to focus on is leaving people better than you find them. Period.
Awesome.
And so that's how I wake up every day. And so when God gave me the vision for Rethink Everything, I'm not smart enough to go, this could be huge. This could make tons of money. All I knew is, gosh, dang it, God wants me to write this freaking purple book. And so I guess I'm going to begrudgingly do it. And man, do I love that we serve a God who really values obedience. And that as we take that step in obedience, he gives you a little bit of extra glimpse into the vision. Because when God gave me the vision for the purple book, if he would have given me the vision back then for like 100 books, I would have never even started the purple book because I'd have been so overwhelmed. Just like if God would have said, one day you're going to be on a podcast with Del Vermillion and Bill Hart, two of the largest personalities in the industry that have done more than most people will ever do in their lives. It's unbelievable. And so all I know to do is wake up every day with a desire to be obedient through the vision that God's given me. And it came to me through prayer because I was lost and confused and didn't have a clue what to do. I wish I would have known about Life Focus 20 years ago, right? I wish I would have known Coach Bill back then, because there's probably some good questions in that curriculum that can help you get there. But when all else fails, turn to the creator of the universe and say, dude, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. And by the grace of God, he's yet to fail me in giving me the enough vision to just take the next step.
I love that. If I can just layer on that Ephesians 2:10, because I think it ties so nicely to what you just said. One of my favorite verses in the Bible that says, we are God's masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. So what that tells us is God has a vision for our life. So to your point, Kyle, if we will literally surrender and just ask him to guide us, he's going to give us vision and see things we don't see. I was thinking before this whole thing about about vision, the whole thing. And I was thinking about how, when I think about the success that I've seen in the industry, a lot of it's because I see things from a positive standpoint that others don't see. So I'll give you two quick examples of this, real simple ones in today's market. Most loan officers today, what they see when they look at the economy is they see trouble, problems, challenges. They talk about inventory, affordability, all these things. You know what I see when I look at today's economy? The biggest opportunity I've ever seen in my 41 years in the business. Why? People are hurting. The economy is rough. They need to save money. They need access to cash. They need a mortgage. They need all the things we do by lowering people's payments and all these things. So what they see as a problem, I see as an opportunity. I hear this from loan officers all the time. There's an inventory issue. I don't see an inventory problem. What I see is your network's too small. That's what I see. That's my vision. If you would just go build more referral partners, you will offset the shortage of inventory very, very quickly. These are just quick examples of how if you see the right vision, it changes your belief and ultimately changes your results. And God's got the answer to all of it. You were dead on, Kyle. I love that.
So good, bud.
Excellent. Well, I know we were just about at time for this week. It reminds me of a quote. We love John Maxwell over here. He says, people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision.
Mm-hmm.
And for us as Christians, ultimately, that leader who we're buying into his vision, that's God. We know he's got a plan for our lives, and we're sold out into it because we're sold out onto him, right? But if you're trying to set a vision for your organization or your team, you first have to become that leader that people are going to trust, because they're going to trust you before they trust the vision that you cast. And same thing for yourself. If you're trying to set a vision for your own life, you got to find a way to have some trust in yourself, right? And so whatever you got to do to upskill or, find who it is that really are what you're best at, what your purpose is in this life, do it, because then you're going to be able to set a vision and trust that you can actually take steps to get there. Make sense?
Love it.
It's good.
Awesome. Any parting comments before we set it for this week, guys?
I thought Dale was going to do it because he said it several times, because I love Dale. I love the way that you can so quickly break down, if this is what you want your loan volume to be, here's how you reverse engineer, right? Based on what you're going to make on each loan, how many, what your percentage of close is versus contacts that need to be made. So I'd love for you to just rattle through that real quick to just help people understand that maybe haven't heard an episode of this before. Like, that to me is truly where we take vision and then turn it into bite-sized chunks for daily action. And so if you want to give an example of like what that looks like, I think that's powerful for people.
Well, look, if any loan officer just studies their results over the last 2-3 years, they're going to determine their conversion rates based on their conversations, how many of those lead into applications, how many of those lead to sales, and how many of those lead to funding. So now you just reverse engineer backwards from that and say, okay, if that's the case, how many more conversations do I need to have to get to that end result I want and not the one I'm getting? And once you determine how much you have to increase your conversations by, now it's real easy. Now you just say, all right, so what activities, what networking, what database mining, what referral sourcing, what do I need to do to generate those opportunities? And you know what? You get on the phone and you get out in the community and you do it. And it never fails itself. I have converted so many loan officers who are average into unbelievable results by simply following that very simple formula. But the key is, you gotta, if you're going to pray for rain, you got to have the hoe in your hand. You got to be willing to work. That's the key to the whole thing.
Yeah, and I would just follow up with that as my final thought here and say,
Please.
commit to the process. The results will take care of themselves.
Exactly right.
I think too often in a very short term, climate that we live in now, people have lost that, and particularly in the mortgage industry, because it was just different for years. The phone was ringing. So if you'll that which Dale just described, commit to the process, and the results will take care of themselves.
Yep.
I think Kyle's put more ink on that baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah, baby.
Focus on what you're sowing, not on what you're reaping, because we know the principle.
Absolutely.
The more you sow, the more you reap. That's all there is to it. And let me say one final thing. I'm going to go back to Ephesians 2:10. You are God's craftsmanship. You're his handiwork. You're his marvel. You were made as the greatest thing he ever made. And he's made some great, incredible things when you look all over this world. Remember that. You're the masterpiece of God, the creator. Just today, remind yourself of that all day long. And I'm telling you, by the end of the day, things will change.
So good.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much as always for your amazing advice. This has been another episode of Success by the Book. You can catch us in your favorite podcasting app, and we'll be posting some clips online. So, gentlemen, we'll see you next Monday. Take care.